Hey everyone, I'm Dan Darcy, Chief Customer Officer at Qualified, and what a crazy year it's been. I mean, it's highlighted one of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is really around customer obsession and delivering a differentiated experience for our customer success. Now, one of the things you have to know is that success obviously just doesn't do it alone. I mean, we do our best work when we're working with our marketing counterparts. And, as a former marketer myself, I look for every chance to work with marketing to really drive that differentiated experience for our customers. And today, I've got a special treat. We're joined by one of the best B2B marketers out there, the Chief Marketing Officer from Dialpad, Morgan Norman. Morgan, welcome to the Pipeline Summit.
Thanks, Dan. I'm thrilled about this series, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Let's talk about the landscape right now. And as a marketing leader, what are you thinking about? What's top of mind for you in the second half of this year?
So one of the things at Dialpad, we're obviously in the AI space as well. If you're not familiar with Dialpad, we're an AI-powered customer intelligence platform. We get all our information from voice, video, messaging, and contact center. So the top of mind is actually, how do you stay in front of this industry? How do you disrupt it with messaging? And how do you actually help your customers go through that transformation of AI? Where do they get started? Where do they actually need to get their customer service teams to adopt AI? Sales teams, those are the big motions we're thinking about.
Customer retention is really an important strategy, and it's become even more important in today's market. How are you guys thinking about customer retention at Dialpad, and what does your customer success organization really look like?
Yeah, so we actually have customer success. We have a new chief customer officer, an amazing gentleman that's come on board. And we actually have customer success driven down by a variety of segments because we deal with very small business, SMB, mid-market, into the biggest companies in the world like Randstad. They have 160,000 employees. So we have to divvy that up in a lot of different ways. The other parts of customer success we have on top of that is, and we work with this in marketing, is we have self-service onboarding because you can actually try and deploy our products by yourself. So we do a lot of stuff that's online, help center, videos, learning paths, if you will. And then we have specific CSMs as you get into larger accounts where they're really hand-holding them not only through deployment, but are they getting the value out of Dialpad as fast as possible? And are they getting the usage and adoption?
Yeah. Now, what role does data play in all of that alignment between marketing success?
Yeah. Well, we're a PLG model and a sales-led model. And where we look at data, instead of just the initial ways we looked at it maybe 10 years ago, we look at heavy adoption down to the feature level. So we look at high adoption accounts, medium adoption accounts, and high usage accounts, if you will. We're also taking that down a layer where 96% of our customers have AI enabled, but we need to go down a layer and say, what features are they using? And what are the high value features based off of the different roles? So how we work with our customer success team, because we run a lot of the product metrics on that side, is let's educate you where there's a gap. How can we actually change some things within our existing life cycle? What content, you have a great background in creating content all throughout your career. What can we surface to the user to educate them? So a lot of it is more about how do they interact with us across the entire life cycle. And then we really kind of help produce kind of world-class content along with the brand, make sure it just looks super engaging for the users.
How can a strong alignment between marketing and success really help drive revenue growth?
Great question. Just full transparency, back in the day, wasn't really customer centric. It's very hard when you have so many demands on the marketing side to just be, customer love every moment, every day. But when growth marketing kind of transformed how we operate, it really transforms everything you're trying to do. I think the pieces that I look in marketing is sometimes customer success teams are not as modern as the way a marketer might be. And sometimes a marketer will try to skip steps with customer success, what they need to do. Build a self-service sign-up that doesn't work for them or not really kind of pop up the right messages. So it's really a mind melt of what is their process? Do we understand their process, how they actually believe, a customer is going to deploy and be successful? And do they understand the tools that we have and what are quick tools we can adjust versus big motions and retooling something for them? So what we kind of look at is actually, how can we help you build that life cycle? A very small business SMB life cycle is very different from enterprise. You might not want us to do a lot of automation in enterprise. It might be talk to an expert, but all that has to be designed in partnership with them. And it's a lot of education on both sides.
All right, Morgan. What are some of the biggest challenges you see between marketing and success, and how do you navigate around those challenges?
The largest challenge I see from a marketing perspective is content creation, honestly. And I don't mean that just, onboarding videos. I actually have to look at the entire help center and say, what's the bounce rate of this specific article? Do we need a video in this article versus just text? How can we actually get this specific help article on brand? Do we need a different blog article that's actually a little bit more education prior to them going to the help center or down a learning pathway? The other largest piece is the learning pathways, is do you understand the learning paths of different types of users by role? And this is where it gets super complex, is saying, what do we want them to learn? What is kind of level 1, level 2, level 3? And typically you don't have the materials all for that. So you have to juggle, like, level 1 materials are going to work for these different audiences, and you have to really decide what are your big bets there. Outside of that is getting awareness that you are customer centric. And that is very hard for most CMOs to do outside of like customer wins and cases, but you want to really help market the team and their philosophy and their approach to transformation.
Let's talk about marketing narratives for a little bit. What are some strategies, your team is utilizing to really understand and drive a better marketing narrative, understanding the learnings from customer success?
Well, a lot of it starts from the web, I believe, in how do we actually understand the behavior of the web? Where do they engage with? What is their entry point? What are their exit points? So we spend a lot of time understanding that down to what your user profile is. If you think your admin is going to have a very different entry point than a specific power user or an individual user that is learning the product. The challenge is a lot of CSMs don't care about that. They're like, that doesn't matter. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's a learning path from a web page to what a blog article might be that's very surface level, to actually how a function works, like the job they're trying to achieve, into, oh, do I want to see a quick, 5-minute onboarding video? And they start to trust that we have the tools to help you be successful. From there, what we also focus in is a lot of automation. Can we take that data, and you asked a lot about data, and can we create any specific triggers based on it or suppress certain triggers? And that gets into another world down to the industry, down to actually what level of user they are, what features they've used. So we use a couple pieces of technology that help us fire different emails. If the user hasn't logged into the app in X time, we'll fire a specific pop-up that will drive them to a help article that the CSMs are saying we don't have adoption on. Another thing we do with CSMs that is really critical, maybe we want to spend time to talk about this, is how do you do a launch with CSMs? I think you and I know we've all made tons of mistakes as marketers. We launch stuff, we don't have the right materials to educate people. So that's a big area that I've always working on perfecting, but I've never got it perfect. So that would be the areas I talk about.
That's an interesting topic that you bring up, because when you think about, we think about it here all the time, and I sometimes think customer success is always left off the enablement path. And so when we're launching a new message, because we have to enable the customer success managers, because they are the first people that customers call. And so, how are you, you even mentioned it just right now, CSMs, don't think in the marketing way. What strategies are you driving to help think more around getting the CSMs to have a marketing mindset?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned enablement, and sad for a lot of folks out there. I think that's true. It's a little bit enablement by osmosis, or the top CSMs are going to educate the other folks out there. What we do a little differently now, as we've kind of matured as a company, we're over 200 million in revenue and scaling quickly. We actually partner with the CSMs throughout the launch. So when we meet with the product team and we're trying to define and really, dumb down what the launch might be, we're then working with the CSMs on the messaging. And we create a couple docs where they can say, this isn't going to make sense for us, because they don't have the bandwidth to pitch these things. The other thing I've learned, and this is you have to create tools they can forward. So they're not going to understand and be able to pitch these things at a launch perfectly on the phone or on a quick, a video meeting. So what do they have to forward afterwards? And a lot of times in marketing, we're lacking there, as you mentioned. We didn't give them everything they need. Is it a couple slides that someone would present internally why we should adopt these features versus a one-pager? So thinking more in a customer-centric way, what would the admin need to kind of educate maybe the sales team or other folks that's saying this is a feature that could drive this type of value? So what we do is build that kit of parts. I think we can always do more with the enablement side, and I think that's a great call out.
Some of the things I think about when I'm also thinking about marketing messaging, what's great about here, I work with our marketing counterparts. Sometimes a lot of our customers really want to learn more about customer value, right? And so I'm like, how do we drive more value as opposed to the features and functions of whatever product we're launching or whatever?
Yeah.
And what value is that going to bring to the customers? So, I mean, how do you guys think about that?
Even my interactions, doing a shameless plug with my experience at Qualified, we saw value very quickly. And I want to talk about that as a segue to what about Dialpad. The pieces of value that I see the challenge for CSMs is they can explain the value to a subset of users, but it can't be passed on very well. The difference is if they can articulate that value to the C-suite quickly in seconds. And if you don't have that kind of quarterly or QBR review, if you don't have materials where that's kind of always top of mind reporting wise, it's challenging for them, and we need to do their job for them. That's not their job to calculate the value of something, we sold to them or partner with them on. So what I think is it's really probably one of the most important things, that ROI, that value, and then the steps to get to that value that marketing needs to agree with CSMs and sales needs to bake. So that's the other area. Yeah.
Well, let's flip this for a little bit here. Yeah. What advice would you have for success leaders out there too? I mean, me being one of them, obviously, we were just talking about, I was a former marketer. When you're working with the success teams, what more can we be doing?
Well, you're never a former marketer.
Yeah.
Once you're a marketer, you're always a marketer. You can't get away from us. I think the things with CSMs is there's a lot of pressure on them. And a lot of times they're unable to convey what the challenges are with the company. What I would ask of CSMs that had helped me when I was, deploying early on products is, what are the top 10 things that are coming up every week? Get together as a group, get that to marketing. Because there's a lack of clarity in the messaging. There's a lack of clarity in what we're offering or specific tools. I think the other piece is that CSMs, believe it or not, are not bad marketers because they have insights on the customer side that in marketing you don't have the bandwidth for. So the way to first partner is obviously on customer stories, and those don't always have to be external stories. Sales teams looking for internal stories where they can understand, this customer did X, they got this type of value. So I would say really help whether the company understand those points, those stories, and eventually that will get into the external pieces. The other area is just like what content matters. It's a different generation out there. It's more complex. We all have less bandwidth. Instead of listening to marketing and what the opinions might be of a CMO like myself, tell us what matters. We get criticized every day, and it's okay. But it would be great if we could say, let's build a roadmap of content together. Let's commit to actually how we develop that, and we'd be pretty good.
I love that because there are different altitudes of content that gets created for the prospect or the customer, right? And sometimes prospects, it's really around scratching the surface, and our customers really want more of a deeper dive into whatever they're driving. And so how do you guys think about that,
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sure a lot of companies out there, you have cabs and you work with certain, folks that help shape how you pitch. I think that the pitches are never shaped ultimately around what the customer needs. That's not how I approach marketing. So how I grew up in marketing is a lot of the marketing tools didn't work for sales. So I created tools that if you drop the deck on the floor, someone could pitch it without us. So I think the main piece is you got to reverse it a little bit and say, okay, you presented all these slides, you presented all this information, all this value. What 3 slides could they present back like in seconds? And what you find is you probably overwhelm them with too many slides. They're not sure which ones. There's a summary, but then what are they going to take to their boss? What are they going to take to their CEO? They have career, objectives. Did we help them with that? And I think simplifying is going to be the big thing in this wave. That's my feedback.
Well, I mean, I think to that point, less is more, as we always hear.
Yeah.
And And I think people consume content and the message in different mediums and ways, right? So that's why we have the explosion of podcasts and, PDFs, events, webinars, all that other stuff. So do you involve a lot of, your customer success teams in that whole, design process as well?
We do actually. We involve them heavily into a lot of the webinars we do. And we actually push a lot of content under CSMs. They just have a different perspective. We do intake interviews, and we always want to highlight more. And the way I kind of approach it in marketing is I work with the first ones that want to be thought leaders, and then everyone kind of gets greedy and wants to be out there. Because we'll publish articles under them, we'll ghostwrite with them, but they have strong opinions. And another way I work with CSMs, and this is a trick, we say, just record anything on your iPhone, record a 60-second message, a 2-minute message, send it to us, we'll turn in an article for you. And then they can understand, like, they matter.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, because I think, a lot of success is really on the front lines of working with the customer. They definitely have a strategic point of view, and they want to be heard. And it may be different. So I love that.
That's great.
Yeah. So what's, just wrapping this all up, what other advice do you have to the marketers and potentially success folks out there watching around how to drive a stronger alignment between marketing and success?
Your history, you folks have a big background of really shaking up industries, and that's what interests most CMOs. You either want to be the leader in this industry or break out from that into a completely new TAM. What I would say is we always struggle with giving the CSMs the messaging at the top level that will land in the industry. And that's one of the most important things I'm working on in this world of AI is like, how do we get them to take that narrative on for us? You have qualified champions. That's a great way of doing it. And I think it's absolutely critical. But when you think about, like, what would the customer describe your company? How would they describe it? Those are things which the marketers and myself, we have to do always a better job of. And you can almost never stay on top of it. It's hard to stick to a message. It just is. But that's the main thing. Enable them to tell that story. And then it just very simple way, and enable it to tell it with value.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much for joining us for Pipeline Summit, and I really appreciate this chat.
It was great. It was great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.